Welcome to our Immigration Briefing show. Today's top stories include a small anti-immigration protest in Bournemouth that saw a massive police response, new smart gates at Sydney Airport causing passenger delays, and a poll showing that many Brits blame immigration for recent riots. First up, a minor protest in Bournemouth was quickly disbanded after counter-protesters outnumbered the anti-immigration activists, leading to a swift police withdrawal. Next, Sydney Airport's new facial recognition smart gates are under fire for causing long queues, with passengers questioning the need for a second photo scan. Lastly, a survey reveals that a significant portion of the British public believes immigration policies are to blame for recent civil unrest, with many pointing fingers at far-right groups and social media companies. Please stay tuned for more details. Telegraph. A small anti-immigration protest outside Bournemouth Town Hall on Sunday quickly fizzled out within 3 hours, despite the presence of officers from 5 police forces. The protest, which began at 11 a.m., saw anti-immigration protesters met by a larger group of counter-protesters from Stand Up to Racism, who used drums and loudspeakers to voice their opposition. The scene dwindled to a few scattered chants of "Stop the Boats" from the anti-immigration side, which was outnumbered by the counter-protesters. The entire event wrapped up just after 2 p.m., with only about 20 anti-immigration protesters remaining, draped in England and Union flags, facing off against 80 Stand Up to Racism activists. The heavy police presence, which included officers from Dorset, the Met, Thames Valley, Hampshire, Avon and Somerset, and Devon and Cornwall, left the scene after just 2.5 hours. Conservative MP Greg Smith criticized the use of resources from multiple police forces, suggesting it could impact day-to-day policing and calling for a strong stance against such protests. The Sydney Morning Herald. Returning to Sydney from an overseas trip, travellers are increasingly frustrated by the new Generation 3 smart gates at Australian airports. Long queues and malfunctioning kiosks have led to delays, with some travellers waiting over 15 minutes just to insert their passports. Previously, the process was quicker and more efficient, involving a simple 2-step procedure. However, the new smart gates require a cumbersome 2-step process, inserting the passport, answering questions, and undergoing 2 separate photo sessions. Many passengers, including regular traveller Julius Thanu, have reported chaotic scenes at Sydney Airport, with long unstaffed queues and malfunctioning machines. Comparisons to immigration processing in other countries, like Singapore, highlight Australia's inefficiencies. The Australian Border Force, ABF, has announced a pilot program for a digital alternative to the paper incoming passenger card, which could streamline the process. The Australia Travel Declaration, ADF, will be trialled on select Qantas flights from New Zealand, potentially offering a more efficient and user-friendly experience for incoming passengers. Telegraph. A recent poll by Savanta revealed that more people believe the recent riots in British towns and cities were about migration rather than the Southport killings. The unrest followed the fatal stabbing of 3 young girls in Merseyside and was fueled by false online rumors that the suspect was an asylum seeker. The survey found that 64% of respondents attributed the riots to the UK's immigration policy, compared to 59% who cited the stabbings. The majority blamed the rioters, far-right groups, and social media companies for the violence. Opinions were divided on the response of Sir Keir Starmer's Labour government, with 52% believing he handled the crisis well. Nigel Farage faced criticism for his comments on the Southport killings, with 51% of respondents holding him partly responsible for the violent protests. The public overwhelmingly supported swift justice for violent protesters and addressing public concerns about immigration. Despite criticisms of two-tier policing, 64% of people felt the police handled the riots well. National Police Chiefs Council's lead on public order, B.J. Harrington, defended the police's approach, emphasizing they are anti-crime rather than anti-protest. The Toronto Star. Zhang Suizi Chen, a 28-year-old from Hangzhou, China, meticulously planned her postgraduate studies abroad, applying to several Canadian institutions and getting accepted to all by March. She chose OCAD University for its master's interdisciplinary program in art, media, and design, applied for her student visa in May, and booked a flight for August 30th. However, with classes starting in 2 weeks, Chen is in a state of panic as her visa has yet to be approved. Changes in federal policies to control international student numbers have led to significant backlogs and processing delays, exacerbating her anxiety. Despite submitting multiple web forms to check her application status, Chen has received only auto-replies and feels neglected by the system. Immigration lawyer Will Tao highlights that delays are particularly severe for applicants from countries with heightened security concerns like China, Iran, and Russia, adding that the process often involves extensive security screenings that further slow down approvals. The Toronto Star. Ing Chong, a 41-year-old from Beijing, has been in Canada for a year with her daughter, who attends middle school as an international student. Chong, unable to work, hopes to further her education but faces delays in obtaining her study permit, despite applying back in March. She has already deferred her admission to North Island College and is anxiously awaiting approval before the registration deadline for Capilano University. Frustrated by seeing others in similar circumstances getting approved faster, Chong contemplates returning to China if her permit doesn't come through. She has already paid significant fees for her daughter's tuition and made deposits to schools she was accepted to, making the prospect of returning home complicated and costly. Chang's situation underscores the need for clearer immigration standards and more efficient processing times. The Guardian. Keenan Malik argues that defending working-class interests involves more than just opposing immigration. Critics of immigration often claim that it harms British workers and advocate for restrictive policies, yet they seldom support measures that genuinely benefit the working class, such as strengthening trade union rights or improving labor market conditions. Over the past decades, successive governments have enacted laws that weaken unions and promote a flexible labor market, which often translates to poor pay and job insecurity. For example, the social care sector, reliant on migrant workers, suffers from low wages and poor conditions, issues that could be resolved with better funding and a unified workforce. Critics of immigration, however, rarely push for these solutions. Malik suggests that true advocates for the working class should also champion policies that enhance workers' rights and welfare, rather than using immigration as a scapegoat while ignoring broader systemic issues. Guardian. Public sentiment has largely approved the government's handling of recent social unrest, particularly its efforts to combat online incitement of racial hatred and violence. According to an opinion poll, 43% of voters approve of the government's response to the riots, while 30% disapprove. The majority of voters believe the government's actions were either proportionate or not strong enough, with only 18% thinking they overreacted. Despite Elon Musk's criticism of the UK's approach to online incitement, 67% of voters support the arrests for inciting racial hatred on social media. Meanwhile, Labour leader Keir Starmer's initial surge in approval ratings has diminished, with his net approval rating falling to -7%. Public sector pay rises have been seen as a significant win for the new government, while Chancellor Rachel Reeves' public spending cuts have been viewed negatively. The poll also highlights challenges for Reform UK in addressing social unrest and far-right influences. Telegraph. The Conservative Party faces a critical need to rebuild and redefine its core principles to regain public trust after significant losses. The party must unite around 10 key propositions, including the importance of the nation-state, sovereignty of parliament, market-driven economic growth, and a functional NHS. The party must also address mass migration, advocating for a small, efficient state, and promoting national unity. Law and order must be restored, with a focus on punishment and rehabilitation. The Conservatives need to become a national party again, serving all regions and demographics, and promoting a unifying national identity. The party must also invest in defense and foreign policy to protect British interests. These principles aim to provide a clear direction and restore the party's credibility. Telegraph. Germany's security services have been mobilized to protect election candidates amid a surge in violence against politicians. Dr. Adeline Abimwe Awemo, a Cameroon-born CDU candidate, was racially attacked while campaigning in Cottbus. Despite the assault, Dr. Awemo remains determined to continue her campaign. The rise in attacks has prompted the Staatsschutz to provide special protection and security advice to candidates. Recent incidents include attacks on SDP's Franziska Giffey and MEP Matthias Eck, as well as harassment of Green Party's Yvonne Mosseler. Chancellor Olaf Scholz condemned the violence, emphasizing the threat to democracy. Dr. Awemo's campaign focuses on addressing voter concerns about migration, as recent polls indicate a potential rise for the hard-right AfD party in the upcoming state elections. Telegraph. Robert Jenrick has laid out 10 principles for the future of the Conservatives, warning that the party must rebuild quickly to avoid political oblivion. In his essay for the Sunday Telegraph, Jenrick emphasized the need for the Tories to redefine their identity and deliver on promises. He highlighted the importance of the nation-state, the sovereignty of the UK Parliament, and market economics. Jenrick also stressed the need for a small, efficient state, a robust justice system, and the end of mass migration. He warned of challenges such as the shift of power from west to east and technological disruptions. Meanwhile, Mel Stride proposed a tax cut to help young people save for housing, while other Tory hopefuls, except Kemi Badenoch, who was on a family holiday, spoke at a hustings event. Tom Tugendhat praised the achievements in the north, and Dame Preeti Patel urged the party to begin selecting candidates for the next general election immediately. The Toronto Star. Roberto Garcia, who crossed the border from Mexico in 2009, is hopeful about a new Biden administration program that allows some spouses of U.S. citizens to legalize their status without leaving the country. Married to an American woman with 3 American children, Garcia has been waiting for 7 years for an appointment at the U.S. consulate in Ciudad Juarez. The new program, offering parole in place, could benefit up to 500,000 people and their children, allowing them to apply for a green card and eventually citizenship. However, concerns remain about the program's longevity, potential legal challenges, and the upcoming presidential election. Immigrant groups are helping people understand the program, but there is hesitancy due to past experiences with policies like DACA. Garcia and others are cautiously optimistic, hoping to avoid the risk of deportation and finally gain legal status. The Toronto Star. Bertram N. Veerasingham from Toronto argues that the homelessness crisis should not be blamed on immigrants. He points out that homelessness is a global issue, visible in urban centers across Europe and the US, and has been building for decades. Instead of scapegoating immigrants, Veerasingham suggests a systemic solution, a mandatory habitat insurance premium for all employed individuals. This premium could be funded by reducing the unemployment insurance premium, which has become a surplus cash cow. The habitat insurance payouts could subsidize housing for those in homeless situations, ensuring pleasant surroundings for the majority while addressing the needs of the unsheltered population. This approach, Veerasingham believes, would be a more effective and humane solution to the homelessness crisis. Telegraph. Have you ever felt the sting of paying for advice you never received? That's the reality for many clients of St. James's Place, Britain's largest wealth manager, which has been consistently underperforming for 7 years according to Bestinvest's Spot the Dog report. With nearly 1 million UK customers, St. James's Place charges almost double the industry average for initial advice, yet £12.6 billion of client money is languishing in underperforming funds. The SJP Global Quality Fund, holding £10.7 billion, has returned a mere 5.9% over 3 years, far below the MSCI World Index's 33.3%. Despite recent attempts to reweight portfolios and appoint new managers, the underperformance persists, prompting experts to recommend alternatives like the Fidelity Index World Fund or Lazard Emerging Markets for better returns. The Telegraph opinion, in a surprising twist, HM Passport Office, once notorious for backlogs and inefficiencies, has transformed into a paragon of efficiency. The process of renewing passports, previously fraught with delays and bureaucratic hurdles, has been streamlined, with online applications and a £207 premium service offering swift, hassle-free renewals. My own experience was remarkably smooth. I booked a 10-minute slot, retained my old passport until receiving the new one, and had the new document in hand within 2 days. This transformation is a stark contrast to past crises, where 500,000 applications piled up in 2014, and a post-COVID surge led to 10-week waits. Now, with simpler forms and quicker processes, renewing a passport is no longer a dreaded ordeal. The Independent, social media's power to spread misinformation was starkly highlighted following the Southport stabbing, where a false identity for the suspect was viewed over 420,000 times. The real suspect, Axel Ridikubana, was misidentified as Ali al-Shakati, an asylum seeker, leading to a potential reach of 1.7 billion people. This misinformation fueled race riots across England, with anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant sentiments boiling over into violence. Data from Hootsuite revealed that posts spreading the false name were shared thousands of times, with significant engagement. The riots, marked by Islamophobic attacks and anti-immigrant rhetoric, underscore the urgent need for accurate information and responsible social media use to prevent such societal upheaval. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.
Turn on the screen, monsters screaming. Empty smiles, their words misleading. Power games in darkened rooms. Spin their lies to seal our doom. Oh, turn on the screen, monsters screaming. Empty smiles, their words misleading. Our games in darkened rooms. Spin their lies to seal our doom. They talk about freedom, justice, fate. Behind their walls, shadows take. Puppeteers with strings of steel. Promises broken, deals they conceal. We're just numbers in their cold hands. Fight the castles built on sand. Rise up now, reclaim the night of their truth in blinding lights. Oh, elections and deals in the dark. Voices lost in power's arc. Leaders laugh while we cry. Change the rules, make us comply. Propaganda